Hello and welcome to the picturesque village of Kingston on the Isle of Purbeck in Dorset. This village is situated around 2 miles south of Quaint Castle and 5 miles east of Swanage that way, and we will be checking out the village, so come along with me. 400 metres above sea level, this tiny village perched on top of a hill is full of history, and it's perhaps best known for having not one but 2 churches, which is quite unusual really. Which is quite unusual really for such a tiny village. There's only 30 to 40 full-time residents, so I wanted to look into a bit more about why that's the case. Here we are approaching the oldest church in the village. It's 12th century and lies to the east of the village centre. And this church exists because Kingston is part of the parish of Quaint Castle, with the parish church being 2 miles away. So for the ease of the villagers, this church was built as a chapel of ease, therefore meaning they didn't have to travel 2 miles to go to church. You can no longer look in the church because it's now a private residence, and it has been for the last 50 years or thereabouts. But in the 1830s, the church was in pretty bad nick. So the owner of Encombe Estate, which the village is part of, decided to have it rebuilt. Here he is, the first Earl of Eldon, and he was actually a pretty important man. He was Lord High Chancellor of Great Britain for many years in the 1800s, which is one of the highest offices of state, and I believe that's how he came to own Encombe Estate. And he was quite an inspiration really, because he was the son of a coal merchant born in Newcastle, and he managed to climb the social ladder to become one of the most important people in the country. The person who the Earl paid to rebuild the Chapel of Ease was George Stanley Repton, and this was an interesting choice because Repton had actually eloped with the Earl's eldest daughter, Elizabeth, in 1817. The Earl and his wife were not happy about this, but clearly they later came round to the idea, and that may in part be because they themselves eloped to be married. The Earl's wife, Bessie, was from a wealthy Scottish banking family, and they didn't approve of her marrying John Scott, which was the Earl's name, because at that point he wasn't the successful man he would go on to become. But they ended up happily married for over 50 years, and they're both buried in the grounds of the old Chapel of Ease. And here we have the newer church, the Church of St James's, which was actually built in 1880 and has the nickname of the Cathedral of Dorset. Here's why. As you can see, it's very grand and opulent, especially for such a tiny village. And it was built by the first Earl of Eldon's grandson to commemorate him. So I guess that's why it is so grand, because he was Lord Chancellor after all. The exterior of the church is built from broken shell limestone quarried less than a mile away, and the stone now has a pinky hue, and that's caused by algae growing on the building. The interior of the church is also built from local materials. The columns and pillars are made of Purbeck marble, famous for its use in some of the great churches including Westminster Abbey and Salisbury Cathedral, and the walls and arches are made from Portland stone, which is famous for its use in St Paul's Cathedral, again quarried locally. After being built in 1880, this church was actually used as a private church for the Eldon family for around 40 years until 1921, when it was consecrated and then was able to be used by the villagers. As a result, the old Chapel of Ease was no longer used as a place of worship, and I think it became the church hall, and then in the 1970s became a private residence and has remained so since then. Now, an alternative theory for why this church was built is that the 3rd Earl of Eldon was caught in bed with the vicar's wife. If that's true, then you could understand why the vicar and the earl wouldn't really want to be seeing each other anymore. And if you're a multimillionaire, what would you do? Well, you can build yourself your own church and basically have it as your private church where you no longer have to see the vicar who was serving the chapel. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was only a very short video of the tiny village with 2 churches. I'm sure there's a lot more history which I haven't touched upon. I'm not a historian, I just find it all very interesting. If you do want to come and visit Kingston yourselves, then there's a number 40 bus which drops you off just outside the village. It goes in the direction of Swanage and Poole. Also, you can drive here. There's a couple of small car parks. It does get busy in the summer months, so just bear that in mind. And it won't take you long to explore the village. Like I say, it is only tiny. But there are plenty of walks you can do from the village with absolutely beautiful scenery. So I would just have a little look, plan what you're going to do and make a proper day of it. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this, please give it a like and subscribe. I'll be making more videos like this very soon.